The city of Chicago never sleeps, but it is cold. Very cold. Pierce stepped out of his black limousine. His shoes cost $3,000. Every step he took on the pavement sounded like a hammer hitting a nail. He didn't look at the sky. He didn't look at the people. He only looked at his watch. To Pierce, time was not just money. Time was power. On the corner of Fifth Avenue sat Silas. Silas was a shadow in a world of bright lights. He sat on a thin piece of cardboard. His coat was held together by tape and hope. In his hands he held a small, battery-operated radio. It played soft jazz, the kind of music that feels like a memory. As Pierce walked toward his office building, he had to pass Silas. He did this every day. Usually he looked through Silas as if he were made of glass. But today was different. Pierce was angry. A multi-million-dollar deal was failing. Silas looked up. His eyes were milky but kind. "Excuse me, sir?" Silas's voice was like dry leaves rubbing together. Pierce stopped. He didn't want to, but he did. "What?" he snapped. "Do you have the time?" Silas asked, pointing to his broken radio. "The battery's died. I just want to know how much of the day is left." Pierce looked at his wrist. His watch glowed in the evening light, a masterpiece of gold and diamonds. He leaned down, bringing the watch inches away from Silas's dirty face. "You want to know the time, Silas?" Pierce sneered. He knew the old man's name from the sign on his cup, but he said it like a curse. "Look at this watch. This watch costs more than you will ever earn in 10 lifetimes. And you know what it tells me? It tells me that my time is worth a fortune. And yours? Your time is worth nothing." Pierce straightened his tie. "You don't need to know the time, old man. You have no meetings. You have no family. You have no future. Why does the time matter to a ghost?" Silas didn't get angry. He didn't beg. He just looked at the gold watch, then back at Pierce's cold blue eyes. "Even a ghost deserves to know when the sun sets, Mr. Pierce," Silas whispered. Pierce laughed, a dry, hollow sound, and walked into his glass tower. He didn't look back. He didn't see Silas pick up a small pencil and mark a notch on his cardboard box. Another day survived. Pierce thought he was the king of the world. He didn't know that in exactly 4 hours, his world would turn into a cage of twisted metal and fire. The clock on the dashboard read 1:14 a.m. The rain wasn't just falling, it was attacking the city. Huge, heavy drops blurred the world outside Pierce's windshield. The windshield wipers moved at maximum speed, but they couldn't keep up. Pierce gripped the leather steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. He was exhausted. His head throbbed from a 12-hour day of arguing over percentages and profit margins. "Idiots," he muttered to the empty car. "Surrounded by idiots." He pressed his foot harder on the gas. He wanted to be home. He wanted to be behind his locked gates, away from the wet, gray reality of the streets. The street was a mirror of black ink. As Pierce rounded a sharp corner near the old industrial district, the world suddenly slipped. It happened in slow motion. The back of the car fishtailed. Pierce slammed on the brakes. A mistake. The tires lost their grip on the oily pavement. The car spun. Once, twice, and then the scream of tearing metal filled the night. The vehicle slammed into a concrete construction barrier and flipped. Glass shattered like diamonds in the dark. The world turned upside down. Then silence. Only the sound of the rain hitting the metal underbelly of the car remained. Pierce opened his eyes. He was hanging by his seatbelt. Everything hurt. A thick, acrid smell began to fill the cabin. Gasoline and burning rubber. He tried to move his legs, but they were pinned under the dashboard. "Help," he croaked. His voice was weak. He tried again, louder. "Help." But the street was empty. The luxury car's safety lights flickered and died. He was trapped in a metal coffin, and a small orange flame began to lick at the edges of the crumpled hood. He reached for the door handle, but the frame was twisted shut. He was the most powerful man in his office, but here he was just a man waiting to burn. A few yards away, huddled under a piece of rusted tin, Silas had been trying to sleep. The crash had sounded like a bomb. He stood up, his joints screaming in the cold. Through the rain, he saw the flickering orange glow of the fire. He recognized the car. It was the same one that had splashed him 100 times. He remembered the face of the man who told him he had no future. Silas didn't hesitate. He grabbed a heavy iron pipe from a pile of construction scrap and limped toward the fire. "Sir, can you hear me?" Silas shouted over the roar of the rain. Pierce looked through the cracked window. He saw the ghost. He saw the man he had insulted just hours ago. "Get me out!" Pierce screamed, tears mixing with the blood on his face. Silas swung the iron pipe with every ounce of strength in his frail body. Crash! The side window turned to dust. Silas reached in, his hands getting cut by the jagged glass, and unbuckled the belt. He grabbed Pierce by his expensive suit jacket and hauled him out of the wreckage. They crawled away together, collapsing onto the wet pavement just as a loud whoosh sent a fireball into the night sky. The car was gone. The emergency room of St. Jude's Hospital was a world of white light and the smell of chemicals. It was a sharp contrast to the black, rainy hell Pierce had just escaped. Pierce lay on a gurney, his face pale, his breathing shallow. He was slipping away. The nurses moved fast, but the paperwork moved slow. Silas stood in the corner, a wet, shivering mess of rags. He looked like he didn't belong in such a clean place. "Name?" the administrator asked, her fingers hovering over a keyboard. I don't know," Silas whispered. "I just found him. No ID. No wallet. No phone," the woman sighed, looking at Pierce's charred suit. "He's a John Doe. We can stabilize him, but he needs a specialized surgery for that internal bleeding. And the medication he needs is out of network and incredibly expensive. We need a deposit or a guarantee of payment to move him to the surgical wing immediately." Silas looked at Pierce. The man who had mocked him. The man who said his time was worth nothing. If Silas walked away now, Pierce would likely die in a waiting room, just another nameless victim of the city. Silas reached into his oversized, dirty coat. He pulled out a small wooden box. It was tied with a piece of old twine. His hands trembled as he untied the knot. This box was Silas's soul. For 22 years he had saved every penny. He had skipped meals. He had frozen in the winter. He was saving for a home, a small shack with a porch in the countryside where he could spend his final days in dignity. He opened the lid. Inside were hundreds of crumpled $5 bills, singles, and a mountain of quarters. "Wait," Silas called out. He walked to the high glass counter. The administrator looked at him with pity. "Sir, we can't take." "Count it," Silas interrupted. His voice was no longer a whisper, it was firm. He dumped the box. The sound of thousands of coins hitting the counter was like thunder in the quiet hallway. Clatter, clatter, click. "This is $4,862, Silas said, his eyes tearing up. "It was for my house. But a house is just wood and stone. A life is different." The administrator stayed silent. She looked at the mountain of coins, then at the homeless man who was giving up his only dream for a stranger who had spit on him. She started counting. "It's enough for the deposit," she finally said, her voice softening. "We're moving him to surgery now." As the doctors wheeled Pierce away, the bright lights reflecting off his oxygen mask, Silas stood alone in the hallway. He looked at his empty wooden box. He felt lighter yet heavier at the same time. He didn't wait for a thank you. He didn't leave his name. He knew that if Pierce knew a ghost had saved him, the man might not be able to live with the debt. Silas tucked the empty box under his arm and walked back out into the cold Chicago rain. He had no money left. He had no future home. But as he stepped onto the sidewalk, he felt more like a man than Pierce ever would. Pierce woke up to the sound of a heart monitor. Beep, beep, beep. For the first time in his life he was grateful for a sound. His body felt like it had been crushed by a mountain, but he was breathing. A nurse entered the room, checking his drip. "You're lucky to be alive, Mr. Pierce," she said quietly. My phone. My wallet," Pierce whispered, his voice cracking. "I need to call my office. I need to pay the bill." The nurse paused. She reached into a cabinet and pulled out a battered, empty wooden box. She placed it on his bedside table. "The bill is already paid, sir. At least the deposit was. $4,800. All in crumpled singles and coins." Pierce stared at the box. He recognized the wood. It was the same wood Silas used to prop up his radio. "Who?" Pierce asked, though he already knew the answer. "He didn't leave a name," the nurse said. "He just said your time was worth a fortune and he wanted to prove it." 2 weeks later, Pierce returned to the corner of Fifth Avenue. He wasn't wearing his $3,000 shoes. He was wearing a simple coat and a look of desperation. The city felt different now. Every person he passed looked like a human being, not a tool. But Silas wasn't there. The sidewalk was empty. Only a few wet pieces of cardboard remained. Pierce searched for hours. He asked other homeless men, people he would have stepped over a month ago. Finally, a young man pointed toward a dark, cold alley behind a collapsed warehouse. "The old man is sick," the boy said. "He gave away his home fund. Now he's just waiting for the end." Pierce ran. He found Silas shivering in the shadows, wrapped in a thin, wet blanket. Silas's face was gray. The pneumonia was taking what the street hadn't already stolen. Pierce knelt in the dirt. He didn't care about his clothes. "Silas," he choked out. Silas opened his milky eyes. A small, weak smile touched his lips. "Mr. Pierce, you look better?" "Why?" Pierce grabbed Silas's cold hand. "I insulted you. I stepped on your memories. I told you that you were a ghost. Why would you give up everything for me?" Silas coughed, a wet, painful sound. "Because, Pierce, if I let you die, then your words would have been true. You would have died with no future. I wanted to give you a chance to change your time. My time was almost over anyway. Yours still has work to do." Pierce looked at his golden watch, the one that had survived the crash. He unbuckled it and tried to put it in Silas's hand. "Take it, please. It's worth a fortune," Pierce pleaded. Silas pushed it away gently. "I told you, son. I don't need to know the time anymore. I'm going where time doesn't exist." Silas passed away that night in a warm hospital bed, paid for by Pierce. But it wasn't enough. The video ends with Pierce standing on the same street corner. He isn't a businessman anymore. He bought the old warehouse and turned it into the Silas Center, a home for those the city had forgotten. Pierce looks at his bare wrist. He stopped wearing a watch. He realized that the value of a man's time isn't measured by the gold on his wrist, but by the lives he saves with the minutes he has left. Being rich is not about how much you have, but how much you give when you have nothing.